You know, Dave, every week we talk about
here,
the
man.
Jägermeister workbench, about rigs and techniques, talking about tarpon.
Yes.
You're fanning yourself with a penny.
This is the king of the tarpon, live tarpon bait, I imagine. One of them.
You know why
There's
he
many
is?
kings.
Because he's accessible 365, 24 hours a day, all the time. He's the number 2 in the system.
What's the number 1 live bait in the system for a tarpon?
It depends on the time of year. Mullet when mullet are migrating, shrimp when the shrimp is cold, you know what I mean? And
Big
the shrimp
shrimp.
are happy.
Do you like
Yeah,
to use
exactly.
a great big shrimp? Do you use them live?
Of course
Or
you use
a
them.
big live shrimp?
Big live shrimp. Love it.
Or a dead mullet
with a
head.
hook-up jig right in the bottom of his nose, coming up the bottom and drop straight down.
How would you hook up a live bait fish to fish for a tarpon?
Actually, here is the rig that I use. It's a 6,000 size spinning reel, 8,000. We put a popping cork that you'd use for trout fishing.
Right.
We got a piece of 40-pound tied to our 832 Suffix braid. And then essentially I use 60 or 80, Suffix fluorocarbon leader. And I like to usually have about 4 to 5 feet of it. Obviously shorten it for the TV purposes.
Now, do you have to have fluorocarbon?
No, you don't.
You can use just like...
You can use regular.
Like, if you don't have fluorocarbon, can you go just down in size a little? Or how far down would you go?
The problem that you run into if you go down in size with mono is you potentially, it doesn't have as much abrasion resistance
as
at least with
fluorocarbon.
my experience with the Suffix.
Well,
it's very abrasion resistant. Now, we're going to use a pinfish. We're going to take this pinfish. This is a 7385 VMC circle hook. And I'm going to go in the shoulder, Dave, and I'm going to pop it out like that. The reason why we like to do that is because, and if you like, some guys like to trim
I was just about to ask.
the fins off, which that's not anything that's going to be a bad thing. But the reason why we like to do that is the pinfish by nature, he wants to be on the bottom.
Correct.
So he's going to dig like nobody's business, and that's why we use the cork to keep him up.
To keep him from
off
going
of
and
the bottom.
hiding.
And he's digging, and that vibration is what the tarpon...
Now, if it was a mullet, would you hook him up in the shoulder or would you put him in the lips?
Hook him in the lip and go to a bigger circle hook, an 8-0, a 9-0 potentially, especially if it's a big, big mullet.
Right.
Because you got to have a gap to hook that fish.
Right. With any circle hook or any bait, anytime you ever use a bait, your bait is what gets in the way of your hookup most of all. So whenever you use a bigger bait, you got to use a bigger hook. And a circle hook especially because it gets swallowed. And how a circle hook works, it has to be swallowed or it will not work. And see how it'll come right to the...
You know what, what I would
right
like
to the corner
do
there.
is I want to show people in the next few weeks how circle hooks work. And we'll use a monofilament and a circle hook and a cup. I'll show you how to do that. You've showed me, so I don't need to show you.
It'll do it with just your hand. I mean, if you just watch that sucker, it'll go right in there. And that's perfect for the big tarpon.
The other thing that's great about tarpons is they eat a lot of great artificials.
They love to eat just about anything that looks like a fish. The DOA bait buster, this thing, the swimming mullet from DOA, these things are a known tarpon killer.
This is the silhouette of a thread fin. They love thread fins over on the West Coast, tarpon do. They fish them on the beaches.
And you shouldn't be afraid of using a bigger lure.
No.
Because they eat big things. A big mullet, you can get a pound or half a pound of a mullet and use it as a live bait. So why can't you use a great big crankbait?
Yeah, this glide wrap works perfectly. It's weighted. You can throw it a mile because it doesn't have a lip. But sometimes fish get a little finicky. And when they do, what you guys want to do is you want to downsize your plugs or downsize your baits. Maybe your pinfish, you're putting on a big pinfish. I found this out. One the size of your hand.
Right.
Go down to a small pinfish and sometimes you'll get a bite.
Now, I fished with Bouncer Smiths one time and we were pulling just small mirror lures, actually. I was surprised how small they were compared to the size of the fish that we were hooking and catching. But he would put, on his mirror lures, he would put a single hook on there. Is that a normal thing for fellas to modify their lures with single hooks when chasing
some
tarpon?
guys like to do that. Bouncer certainly does. I think what happens too in that situation, Bouncer a lot of times is fishing a straight up and down. And so a single
We were actually
hook,
trolling that night.
Okay.
Like slow trolling, yeah.
And so that allows that hook to be obviously exposed, specifically in a trolling situation.